This is a CHGO emergency pod. This emergency pod is presented by Indeed. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ALLCITY. That's Indeed.com/ALLCITY. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. And the Chicago Fire will be needing to make a hire of some sort come this offseason because, of course, the big news this morning on Monday morning was the announcement that Sporting Director Georg Heitz will be departing the club at the end of the season. There's obviously been lots of calls in recent years for the Fire to part ways with Heitz, given the struggles of the team while he has held the sporting director post. And in the end, if all the statements are to be believed, it is Heitz who has made the decision, not anyone above him, to depart the club. So that is the big news. Quickly, I'll read the statements in full from both Heitz and Joe Mansueto, because I think there's a lot of good detail in here to kind of glean some insight into how these decisions got made. So this from Georg Heitz, quote, "It is with a heavy heart that I have decided to return to Switzerland after the 2024 season due to personal reasons. I'd like to express my deepest gratitude to Joe Mansueto and his family for their unwavering trust and loyalty. I also want to thank the players, coaches, staff, fans, and everyone associated with the Chicago Fire for their hard work and support. Although the results have fallen short of our expectations, I am proud of the progress in other important areas and the working culture we've established, which will serve the organization well moving forward. With the move to a new performance center and added roster flexibility in the offseason, I am confident the future is bright for this club. We also remain fully committed to qualifying for the 2024 MLS Cup playoffs and will give everything until the very last moment to achieve that goal." And then from Chicago Fire chairman and owner Joe Mansueto, quote, "Georg recently informed me of his decision to step away from the Fire after the season, and while I respect his choice to return to Switzerland, his presence and leadership will be greatly missed. I would like to sincerely thank Georg for his dedicated efforts to expand our football operations and build a structure that will set the club up for success." So a whole bunch in those two statements of things looking nice for the future. A whole lot of, hey, well, the other stuff is good while the team hasn't been. Personally, I think this is pretty big. You can't fire me, I quit vibes, because I think Heitz was surprised that he still had this job. I've mentioned that on the podcast. Other people have said the same. He was given a contract extension in this last offseason. And to be fair to him, probably had his best transfer window in this job. I mean, Ugo Kuipers has been a pretty clear success in terms of him coming in as a DP number 9, getting Kellen Acosta over the line, though it seems that money was a big part of making that happen, but still that probably took some convincing. The Andrew Gutman signing, injury has prevented how good or not that might have been, but I think that was a move that everybody felt pretty good about at the time. But this is a change that should have happened over the last offseason. If you take Joe Mansueto at his word here, he's indicating he's surprised, which means you have to conclude that Mansueto wasn't going to fire Georg Heitz, that Georg Heitz was going to still be the guy in the next season and the future if he didn't pull the plug himself. If you want to be a little tinfoil hatty and a little cynical, maybe this isn't a situation where the decision was made that Heitz was going to be let go, and it has been presented in a way that, puts it in Heitz's court and makes it seem like a bit of a surprise. But again, I think that would be assuming a whole lot. But that's kind of the whole problem here, is that if Heitz didn't resign, he was never going to be replaced. It's been the problem with Frank Klopas this season. I think a lot of us in the media and fans as well expected, when things really felt at a low point about a third to halfway through this MLS season, that Frank Klopas should just step aside, that he clearly loves this club so much, and that, there was worries that the club's performance was going to drag on his personal reputation and how he is remembered for what he did for this club on the field, what he did for the team off it before he was the coach, the various roles he's held, the loyal servant he's been to the team. And so that's clearly the case there as well, that the only way Klopas was ever going to not be the coach this entire season was if it was his choice, because it's not coming from the top there's the concern that it doesn't seem to matter if people are underperforming if the vibes off the field are good. Heitz said, quote, "I'm proud of our progress in other areas." Both Georg Heitz and Joe Mansueto certainly do deserve some credit for the work they have done everywhere else in the team besides the first team. I mean, they inherited a club that was kind of a mess. And by all accounts, the community outreach portions, the youth academy, getting that training center built, I mean, which is a big, big deal. I think that's worth emphasizing. The Fire's facilities have been lagging behind in MLS. They were never great. And as a lot of new money and new teams have come into the league and other teams have upgraded their facilities, the Flyers facilities really paled in comparison. And so the new training center, the new club headquarters, that's going to get them up to the forefront, up to that, tier A of the league in terms of facility standards. And that does help when it comes to signing players. Walking a player around a prospective signing or in a brand new training center near downtown, whole lot better than walking them around SeatGeek Stadium and Mount Bridgeview and those fields out in Bridgeview. It's just apples and oranges. People might think that doesn't actually matter, but in terms of making a first impression, it really, really does. Shout out to Miguel here in the chat. I'm glad the decision was made, but I'm nervous about who could fill his shoes, which we will come on to in a few minutes, because it does feel Heitz stayed because no all good alternative was interested in the job. Are there any initial options? We'll get to that. I think it's too early to know too much in terms of who might be interested or who you would go with. I mean, the ship that sailed over a year ago now was when Garth Lagerwey left Seattle. That was the time. Like, Lagerwey, Metro Chicago native, that's a guy who should have absolutely, had a Brinks truck driven to his house. He should have been given a blank check. And instead, he ends up in Atlanta, where he's got quite a rebuilding project ahead of him. Somehow, Atlanta are basically as bad as the Fire, which I still don't know how that's possible. But no, that was the guy. When it was clear things weren't working with Heitz, and maybe the best executive in MLS came available, who also has Chicago ties. That was the time. The other name that you would have thrown a Brinks truck at would have been Tim Bezbachenko, who departed Columbus Crew earlier this season. He is now kind of the head soccer guy for the multi-club ownership model that's headed up by Bill Foley, who owns the Las Vegas Knights. Bournemouth in the Premier League is the kind of the big shiny toy in that organization so far. Jesus in the chat, show them the new training centers, then feed them some awesome tacos. Who would say no? That's honestly a great plan. Just show them around the new training center, take them into Pilsen a few blocks away, give them, just show them some of the best Mexican food you're going to find anywhere. And yeah, that honestly seems like a pretty good strategy to me. But as good as all the other stuff has been, Heitz's first priority was the first team. The first team has not been good. And that's why a change needed to happen anyway. And again, I think Georg Heitz is a smart guy. I mean, he was very responsible for Basel punching above their weight in Europe and going from a team that just had a good academy to a team that could spring a surprise on the European stage against heavyweights. I mean, he's a bright guy. I've never had anything but positive experiences, like, interacting with or around him. He seems really well liked. Just, it's not working. And ultimately, a change probably should have been made by now, but we get to a point where it's him making the change. As we take a look here at the Fire's record under Georg Heitz, I mean, if you're a Fire fan, you are well aware of this history. 11th, 12th, 13th. They're currently in 14th. Based on the Fire's current pace, they are only on pace to win 8 games this season, which would be the worst season in Heitz's tenure. Obviously 2020, only 23 games, was shortened by the pandemic, but it's been about the exact same. And so you have to look to what's been constant. It's been the Sporting leadership. And so somebody else is going to have to get a crack at this. Heitz mentioned in his statement that, there's going to be added roster flexibility in the offseason, basically saying, yeah, I've kind of made a mess, but hey, whoever comes in next is going to have a great opportunity to clean it up. And that is true. There are a lot of contracts coming off the books. Just a quick rundown. Alan Aragoni's contract is technically up for an option this year, but that's going to be picked up. He has 3 more option years. He's been excellent. He's going nowhere. Rafael Schihos out of contract. Fabian Herbers, Wyatt Omsberg, of course, Jurgen Shaqiri. Victor Bezerra with an option year, Javi Casas with 2 option years, Jonathan Dean, 1 option year, Jeff Gall, 1 option year, and Spencer Ritchie. So that's a lot of flexibility. Obviously, Gaston Jimenez, as has been harped on plenty, his contract can be bought back down. So it's looking right now like the Fire are going to have 2 open DP spots this offseason. So that's a big opportunity for a new sporting director to come in and make an impact. And again, a lot of those supplemental roster guys, a lot of them could be gone next year. That's an opportunity to make a lot of changes. Eric Alley in the chat, looks like Mansueto is a patient owner, and that could make the job look more appealing. Well, you do have to say that, Mansueto, if he likes you and gets along well with you, certainly is not in a rush to pull the trigger. He's certainly not a trigger happy guy. So I do suppose that's a good point, that if you're a person looking to come into the job, you could be pretty confident you're going to be given time. But again, the DP signings, that's really the big thing. And if we take a quick look at that list, again, Fire fans are going to be very familiar with this group of players, but Nacho ALLCITY, bust. Jairo Torres, bigger bust. Gaston Jimenez, good squad player, but never a DP level player. Ousmane Doumbia was just filling a warm seat, basically. Robert Baric was fine, but didn't have any help. And then, there is the albatross that is Xherdan Shaqiri and his over $8 million a year salary. Still no sign of him, by the way, if he shows up at NYCFC. I should say no sign of him in terms of playing a game. He has been at training. So we'll see what his role is going to be. And then, of course, Ugo Kuipers, who's kind of like the one designated player signing in the Heights era that is kind of a unquestionable success. Before we take a quick break, a rundown of some other notable signings, for better or worse. And I guess this is a bit of a trigger warning, Fire fans, for the list of names that I am about to go through here. Miguel Navarro, you could say, was, an okay player, except, he had a penchant for the final day of the season to do really dumb things. Alvaro Madron, Lucas Stojanovic, Jean Espinoza, who apparently might be going to Inter Milan from Lugano in what would be one of the funnier Fire adjacent transfers in recent times. Fede Navarro, good player, injury troubles, disciplinary stuff, hasn't really improved. Stanislav Ivanov, gigantic bust. Rafael Shihos was good and now is really struggling this season. Boris Sekulic, John Duran, who, if he can get an exit from Aston Villa that he and his agent seem to be engineering, could get the Fire a nice windfall and a sell-on clause. That's something to keep an eye on. Arno Suke, Marin Haile Selassie, is that a success? Yes, but he also came from Lugano, so how much credit can you give there? Chris Mueller, Kasper Shabilko, woof. Georgios Koutsias, Kai Kamara, Carlos Turan, Callan Acosta. So I think the best you could say about that is that it has been a mixed bag. And again, so the floor is not that high in terms of the bar to clear for whoever comes in next. There's going to be a lot of roster flexibility. There's going to be multiple designated player spots open. But ultimately, Joe Mansueto and the other decision makers at the Fire got to make the right call. Like, this is a very important hire. Obviously, it's understandable that Fire fans might not have confidence that Mansueto is going to make the right call, but as we'll come on to after a quick break, there is one name that's a pretty obvious candidate that seems potentially foolproof, and we'll get to that right after a quick word from those folks making CHGO Fire possible. CHGO Fire is brought to you and, as of course, normally presented by Coors Light. Chicago, choose chill. There's a lot of times you can choose a chill mindset. Maybe you were out chilling on a rooftop or outdoors somewhere watching the Air and Water show. There was a bunch of concerts, including the Metallica shows this weekend. Maybe you were hanging out, going to attend that. Maybe your sports teams, are just making you absolutely furious if you're a White Sox fan like me, or you're enjoying the Cubs, enjoying maybe the Olympics. There's been lots of opportunities to chill and cheer on Team USA. And when you choose to chill, reach for an ice-cold Coors Light. When the mountains turn blue, Coors Light is as cold as the Rockies. It is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged for a smoother finish. So when you embrace a chill mindset, it's a good time to choose chill and crack open a Coors Light. Coors Light is mountain cold refreshment, crisp and refreshing as the Colorado Rockies. Make the most out of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/CHGO Soccer. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. CHGO Fire also brought to you by Shady Rays. Get ready for the rest of your summer adventures with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered. Premium polarized shades that will not break the bank. A bargain in comparison to some of the other options out there, and their optics, their quality are just as good, right up there. Shady Rays, they're an independent company. They're offering a world-class product. They've received over 300,000 5-star reviews. Their shades have durable frames, crystal clear optics. They are the perfect choice for all of your outdoor summer activities and adventures. Shady Rays has hundreds of options to choose from. You are bound to find the perfect pair to fit what you are looking for. And they've got all sorts of colors as well, whether it's your team's favorite colors or you like to mix and match with cool looking shades, lenses as well. They have got something for your style. Got to, of course, give a big shout out to their customer service as well and their ease of their process of replacing your shades if you break or lose them. I got a huge discount on a brand new pair of shades that I bought it for 2 years ago. Got a great deal on an 11th birthday special edition pair of Shady Rays as well. It's really the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Their lost or broken guarantee. Also, if you don't love your shades, you can exchange them for a new pair worry-free within the first 30 days. There is no risk when you shop. Their team always has your back with their personal and fast support. Exclusively for CHGO listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code CHGO for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. All right, so Georg Heitz is leaving the Chicago Fire. What does that mean? Well, first, as of right now, technical director Sebastian Pelzer, who's kind of been Heitz's right-hand man, technically working just under him in the hierarchy of the Fire, he is staying. He probably is the most, obvious or likely guy to potentially get elevated to that role. Obviously, that wouldn't exactly herald a big change in direction. This has now mostly been on a coaching front, but you also have to consider the front office implications as well. The obvious name that comes up here is Greg Berhalter, most recently the head coach of the U.S. men's national team, of course, formerly of the Columbus Crew. Berhalter, of course, lives in Chicago already, so he's kind of been a name, like I said, that's gotten battered around a bit in terms of his potential as the Chicago Fire's next head coach. But you got to think that a sort of role, not unlike what, say, Peter Vermees has in Kansas City, could potentially be on the table as well. I think you at least have to kick the tires on that. Maybe Berhalter isn't interested in that kind of role. Maybe he's only interested in being the coach, but perhaps he takes on more of a, traditional manager type role where he does have a lot of say over the roster construction. And you see him and Pelzer, for example, working kind of in tandem rather than a separate hire of being, a coach and then somebody else is hired as the sporting director, or giving Berhalter that job title at all. I think he's got to be the guy who you look to first. The Fire, they're going to conduct their search. They're going to be thorough. They're going to look at a lot of candidates, but I think it's safe to say Berhalter probably would have a bit of a head start on any other candidates. This, of course, assumes he's interested, that he would want the job, that he's looking to jump right back into a job after leaving the U.S. not that long ago. But for any other names, I think we've got to wait. We've got to see what develops. We got to see what direction the Fire choose to go. The assumption is going to be that Frank Klopas will leave the team this offseason, although given the way the Fire work, who knows? That seems like the default thing to happen. But, again, for there to be a coaching opening, there would have to be a vacancy first. And given the way things are going, I would imagine that if and when that happens, it will be phrased in a similar way to what we saw today from Heitz, where it's Frank Klopas stepping down rather than, any sort of, the Chicago Fire and Frank Klopas mutually agree to part ways sort of situation. I think it would very much be on Klopas's terms if and when he is no longer head coach. But to be honest, if the team stays where they are right now, they're in 14th place. Doesn't matter who the head coach is. There's just absolutely got to be a change there. Honestly, if the Fire get into the playoffs or sneak in, I don't think it really matters. With 9 teams making the playoffs and the East being such a mess, there's got to be wholesale change. Maybe Pelzer sticks around in some sort of, slightly adjusted role within the structure as kind of a continuity piece. But there's got to be some fresh ideas brought in both in the front office and on the touchline. I think that's pretty obvious at this point. And then obviously big decisions to be made by whoever those new hires are in terms of filling out that roster and making this into a team that is not just a bottom feeder in the Eastern Conference, which frankly is all they have been, since long before Georg Heitz got here. I mean, this team has been some version of this now for 7 years, and it was past time for a new crew to come in, pardon the pun, with potentially it being Berhalter, and have another crack at this and try to be the folks who get this team back into being a competitive, serious, team, serious entity to be worried about if you're the rest of the Eastern Conference in Major League Soccer play. A quick note at the rest of the Fire's schedule for this year. We are hitting the home stretch. They are at New York City FC on August 24th, their first game post-Leagues Cup. That is going to be after a very long layoff. So it's going to be interesting to see, particularly in terms of Jordan Shaqiri's role, what that looks like, and how the team is set up, because that's going to be the healthiest this team has been all season when they head to NYCFC here in a couple weeks. That is followed by a 3-game homestand, Miami, DC, Red Bulls. And got a shout out here. We are having a CHGO Fire takeover event at that Miami game on August 31st. Got to think Messi's going to be healthy by then. That is certainly the hope and a chance, whether he's there or not, for the Fire to do again what they did last year and put an absolute hurting on the team from Fort Lauderdale. So go to the events page on the CHGO website. There's a discount for diehards. We've got tickets available, trying to get a group of CHGO Fire fans and listeners together. Enjoy watching that game. There's going to be a tailgate before, more details to come. If you're watching on YouTube, there is the info, August 31st, 5:30 p.m. Again, details to come on the tailgate. Super, super excited about that, and hope everybody listening can either in the seats or in the parking lot come out and join us for that. So it's Miami, it's DC, it's the Red Bulls in that homestand. The Fire then go away to Nashville and Montreal. They come home against Toronto, that game being played out at SeatGeek Stadium due to a Bears conflict. I believe the DC game might be as well. I got to double check that there's 2 games. It's Toronto and one other. Then they're at Charlotte, who, my goodness, Charlotte are doing some things. They signed Tim Ream and now might be bringing Miguel Almiron, an Atlanta United legend, back to Major League Soccer per reports. So that could be interesting. And then they finish versus Nashville at home. So yes, that is Nashville twice basically in the last month of the season. It's not that hard a run-in, all things considered, if you look at the teams on that list. As always, there's really no excuse for the Fire not to be one of those 9 teams who gets into that bloated MLS Cup playoff field. Will they? It's got to start in New York here in 12 days' time. That's got to be a game where the Fire are going out there, taking advantage of all the rest they've had, and trying to put the pedal to the metal for the rest of the season. They'll be healthier. Hopefully they'll be in a better place, and hopefully they can get a few things going and have some momentum going into what is going to be, once again, an extremely important offseason. The next episode of CHGO Fire, the next normal episode, will be on Tuesday, August 27th. We'll be recapping the game at NYCFC, looking ahead to the takeover, looking ahead to that Miami game. There will be emergency podcasts, of course, if any other news of this level breaks between now and then. But, thought it was a good day to get on here. And we had to talk about a piece of news that so many fans have been expecting, wanting, hoping for years. And it finally came today. Georg Heitz is out. What is next? No one really knows, but it's going to be a new face leading the soccer efforts for the Chicago Fire come 2025. That is going to do it for this emergency podcast edition of CHGO Fire. Shout out to Joey, shout out to Sarah behind the scenes for helping me get this going today. I know, sorry, Eric, yes, August 27th is a long wait, but we will have soccer to discuss. We will have Miami to look forward to as the Chicago Fire hit the home stretch. I'm Alex Campbell. Thanks so much for tuning in to this emergency CHGO podcast presented by Indeed, and I'll see you next time on CHGO Fire.
We all silly like the mayor.